In the recording that I just finished a moment ago, I spoke about headship as the Son of God, which is high priest and headship over the house of God, which is a kind of father headship. I spoke about the four journeys that are available to some of these journeys are available to all of us. Some of these journeys are available to some of us, um, and some are only available to a few of us by calling, God's choice. Uh, Personal or individual journey, everybody has one. It's slightly different for each of us, but there are general paths that are available. You'll take one or another. The second journey is the corporate journey, and you can be your corporate journey can be part of a body or a part of a head uh, or part of a house. Um, so your corporate journey can be a headship journey or it may not be. And your leadership journey, you may or may not have been called to be an apostle or prophet. Some are called as apostles and some are called as prophets. Everybody else are not. And then headship is something that is available to a few. In the last recording, I spent a lot of time talking about father headship over the house of God. In this recording, I'm going to speak about husband headship over New Jerusalem. Again, a few are called to the headship journey. And there are three kinds of headship journeys: husband headship, father headship, or king headship. And the king headship has two kinds of headship. One is the king headship over a body or a city. The other one is the father headship over the house of God. And the third, I'm sorry, got lost in my headships there. Let's back up. Um, Husband headship, father headship, and king headship. In husband headship, you are in headship over a body or a city. So, for example, being in husband headship over the body of Christ, the body of Christ is a bride, body, bride, wife is the journey, husband in headship. Two kinds of husband headships, spiritual. One is the husband headship over the body of Christ, which Yeshua, of course, is the head. But there are some that are called to be in oneness with him to function in that headship. And then there is headship, father headship over New Jerusalem. That's what I'm going to talk about in a moment. Then going on to father headship, there's father headship over the house of God, and then there's two kinds of king headship, which I won't go into at the moment. Okay, so today at this recording, I'm going to speak about husband headship over New Jerusalem. First off, New Jerusalem is a corporate and an individual, also an individual identity. So it's an individual identity. Each one of us is meant to individually become a New Jerusalem. And it's a corporate identity. Each one of us is meant to become part of New Jerusalem or in headship over New Jerusalem. What is the function of New Jerusalem? Well, primarily, the function of New Jerusalem is to bring us into immortality. In New Jerusalem, there's no sorrow, sighing, there's no sickness, but primarily and most importantly, there's no death, no mortal death. So New Jerusalem is a identity with the purpose of bringing each of us into immortality. There are two journeys to immortality. One is to be part of New Jerusalem as a city, which is also a body, because New Jerusalem is the bride of the Lamb, right? And when she's fully grown up and matured, she becomes the wife of the Lamb. The point at which you become immortal is when you become the wife of the Lamb. The wedding supper of the Lamb brings you to immortality, because the wedding supper is part of your marriage to Yeshua as the husband, the Lamb. You see it? Your journey as New Jerusalem is not complete until you are immortal, till your body is immortal, because immortality is of the body. It's not of the soul or the spirit, it's of the body. The body is changed from being a mortal body to being an immortal body. It is a journey, it is a process that happens over time, and it happens in New Jerusalem. There are, however, two ways to get to immortality. The one is to be New Jerusalem, the other is to be in headship over New Jerusalem. And this is the journey that heads take, those who have been given husband headship over New Jerusalem. This is something that I've been given. We're all familiar with the dance floor, or many of you are, where the bride dances with the bridegroom. My most recent encounter experience, which is maybe half a year ago now, as on the dance floor, was not dancing with Yeshua as the king or as Christ, and it was not dancing with Yeshua as the lamb. It was me dancing as the lamb. I was in the bridegroom position on the dance floor as the lamb, which means my calling, and there are others besides me that are called to this, is to have a journey to become part of the corporate lamb in headship over New Jerusalem, which means that I'm going to have the function of giving others immortality. That's the function that I am growing up into as a head over New Jerusalem, in oneness with Yeshua, who's in head over New Jerusalem. And that head over New Jerusalem identity is called the Lamb. A few are called to be part of a corporate head over New Jerusalem. Everybody else is called to be part of New Jerusalem as a body, as a bride, as a wife, as a city. And being part of this brings us to immortality, individually and corporately. The New Jerusalem identity is so important. Your identity as a personal, individual New Jerusalem, as part of the corporate New Jerusalem, is what will bring you to immortality one way or another. For you, let's talk about how people become immortal. Well, Yeshua became immortal by being resurrected from the dead. And most believers will become immortal by being resurrected from the dead, either, well, at the second resurrection, which is the general resurrection, the one where everybody that's left at that point is going to get resurrected. Some are resurrected to condemnation, some are resurrected to immortality. Um, then for the apostles, the 12, and others who have overcome and been given to do a journey that's um, qualifies them for the first resurrection, they will receive their immortality at the first resurrection, which happens before the second resurrection. And then before the first resurrection, there are some who become immortal without dying. So they don't have to be resurrected, they just are given immortality. But it's very, very important to see that the function, the major function of New Jerusalem is to bring us to immortality, to bring our body to the place of being immortal, where it can no longer die. Let's talk about that for a moment. Yeshua couldn't die because of sin because he never sinned. So he wasn't dying moment by moment. Dying, you will die. That's what the Lord said to Adam once he had fallen. Dying, you will die. He began dying the very moment that he fell. Hundreds of years later, he was 900 something years old by the time he actually did have his body die. Um, all that dying that his body was doing over all that time finally came to the place of bringing him to mortal death, physical death. Dying, you will die. He was dying every moment from the moment that he fell, but he didn't actually die, have his body die until the day of his death. Yeshua didn't have any of that going on in him because he didn't sin. The wages of sin is death, right? The wages of sin is mortal death of the body. He was never going to die that way. He chose to die as a sacrifice. And he was able to die because he was not yet immortal. Once you're immortal, you're not able to die. Your body's not able to die. It couldn't if it wanted to. Once you're immortal, you couldn't die. You couldn't choose to die. I mean, you just can't do it. It isn't going to happen. That's what immortality means. Adam was created neither immortal nor mortal. And then he fell and became mortal. He was meant, well, I mean, God had a plan, but he could have, maybe he couldn't even, but let's say we can anyway, come to the place where we aren't going to die because of sin, and then go on one more step to the place where we can't die, and that's immortal. Adam was created, made rather, at a where he was neither mortal nor immortal. He could die, but he wasn't going to die because of sin until he fell. And Yeshua was conceived at that same place. He was not mortal, he never became mortal. And he did choose to die. He was able to die, but not from sin. He's able to die because of the cross. And then he was resurrected to immortality. Again, most believers will be resurrected to immortality. That's how they'll become immortal. But those who see the revelation of New Jerusalem and begin the journey towards immortality of their body will receive immortality of their body without dying. That's what New Jerusalem's all about. And those who are called to husband headship over New Jerusalem will facilitate that for others who are part of New Jerusalem. Now, I've just done some sowing of truth, depending on where you are. I mean, this may be the first time you've heard about this. So in that case, this is a seed that you can receive. And at a later point, you will enter into the function of functioning as New Jerusalem, and New Jerusalem will do its purpose, which is bring you to immortality. Well, others of you have known that you're New Jerusalem for quite a long time. You've had the revelation of New Jerusalem being a corporate and an individual identity. Many of you may have had a revelation of the corporate New Jerusalem. You may not have known what it was all about, that it actually is ultimately meant to bring you to immortality. But you now have all that, and you can receive all that revelation. But others of you who have been part of this journey, you've done this New Jerusalem journey to some extent, this will advance you along the journey and show you what the goal is. Set it as a goal. Set immortality as your goal. And believe for your New Jerusalem identity to bring you to that place. And a very few of you at some point are going to realize you've been called to husband headship over New Jerusalem, to join Yeshua in that identity as the Lamb. Don't trigger at that. There are some that are called to that. You may want to listen to this more than once.